You're sitting at your kitchen table, maybe enjoying your morning coffee, when suddenly you feel it. That pounding in your temples, that uncomfortable pressure behind your eyes. You check your blood pressure monitor, and there it is. The numbers are climbing again. 140/90, 150/95. Your heart races, which only makes things worse. Now, you've probably heard about garlic tea. Everyone talks about garlic tea. Drink garlic tea, they say. It will fix everything. But let me tell you something that might surprise you. After more than 20 years of treating patients with cardiovascular concerns, I've discovered that there's something far more effective sitting in most people's kitchens right now. Something that works faster, tastes infinitely better, and has remarkable science supporting its ability to calm those frightening blood pressure spikes. I'm Dr. Sophia Reynolds, and I specialize in cardiovascular wellness and preventive medicine. Throughout my career, I've helped thousands of patients navigate the complicated world of heart health. And today, I want to share with you one of the most underutilized natural approaches I've encountered. This isn't about replacing your medication or ignoring your doctor's advice. This is about understanding how certain foods can work alongside your treatment plan to give you better results. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I highly recommend hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you never miss another health tip made especially for you. And if you find this video helpful, please leave your suggestions for future topics and any questions in the comments below. I read every single one, and it helps me create more content to help people just like you. Now let me tell you about Mrs. Dorothy Henderson. She's 73 years old, a retired school teacher from Austin, Texas. Dorothy spent 35 years teaching third grade, and she was the kind of teacher every child remembers fondly. Patient, kind, always had a warm smile. But when she came to see me 2 years ago, that smile was replaced by constant worry. "Dr. Reynolds," she said, gripping her purse nervously, "I wake up every morning afraid to check my blood pressure. Some days it's fine and I feel like I can breathe. Other days, it spikes so high I'm terrified I'm going to have a stroke right there in my bathroom." Dorothy was taking her prescribed medication religiously. She had reduced her salt intake. She walked 30 minutes every day around her neighborhood, but those unpredictable spikes kept happening, especially during stressful moments. Her daughter was going through a difficult divorce, and every time the phone rang with bad news, Dorothy's numbers would shoot up. I asked her about her diet in detail. She mentioned she'd been drinking garlic tea every night because her neighbor swore by it. 2 cloves of raw garlic, steeped in hot water, gulped down despite the terrible taste. She'd been doing this for 6 months with minimal improvement in her spike episodes. That's when I introduced her to something different. Something that would change her relationship with her blood pressure completely. The food I'm talking about is beetroot. Yes, simple, humble beetroot. That deep purple vegetable that most people walk right past in the grocery store. But before you click away thinking this is just another superfood fad, let me explain the remarkable science behind why beetroot works so effectively for blood pressure, and why it often outperforms popular remedies like garlic tea. Beetroot contains extraordinarily high concentrations of naturally occurring nitrates. Now, when you consume these nitrates, something fascinating happens in your body. Your saliva contains bacteria that convert these nitrates into nitrites. Then, in your stomach's acidic environment, these nitrites transform into nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is absolutely crucial for blood vessel health. Think of your blood vessels like garden hoses. When they're relaxed and flexible, water flows through easily. But when they're stiff and constricted, pressure builds up. Nitric oxide signals the smooth muscle cells in your blood vessel walls to relax. When those muscles relax, the vessels dilate, and blood flows more freely. The result is lower pressure against those vessel walls. Now, garlic does have some cardiovascular benefits. I'm not dismissing it entirely. Garlic contains compounds called allicin and other sulfur-based molecules that can have mild effects on blood pressure over time. But the mechanism is different and generally slower. Garlic primarily works through its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. These are good things, but they take weeks or months to show measurable effects on blood pressure. Beetroot, on the other hand, provides a more direct pathway to blood vessel relaxation through that nitric oxide mechanism. The effect is measurable within hours, not weeks. And for someone experiencing acute spikes, that rapid response can make a significant difference in how they feel and how much stress they put on their cardiovascular system. What makes beetroot particularly effective compared to garlic is the speed and magnitude of this effect. Studies have shown that drinking beetroot juice can lower systolic blood pressure by 4 to 10 points within just 2 to 3 hours. For someone experiencing a blood pressure spike, that rapid response can be genuinely meaningful. Let me tell you about Mr. Raymond Foster. Raymond is 68 years old, a former construction foreman from Cleveland, Ohio. Big man, strong hands, spent 40 years building things with those hands. He helped construct some of the most recognizable buildings in downtown Cleveland. He takes pride in pointing them out to his grandchildren when they drive through the city. But high blood pressure runs in his family like an unwelcome inheritance. His father had a stroke at 70. His older brother had one at 65. His uncle on his mother's side dealt with heart problems for decades before passing away. Raymond was determined not to follow that path. "I've seen what this disease does to people," he told me during our first appointment, his voice gruff but clearly worried. "I watched my dad lose the ability to speak properly after his stroke. Watched my brother struggle to button his own shirt. I've got grandkids I want to see graduate from high school, maybe even college. I'll do whatever it takes." Raymond had been doing everything right, or so he thought. "I've cut back on the beer. I eat salads now, which my buddies at the diner think is absolutely hilarious. A man my size pushing lettuce around a plate. I even tried that apple cider vinegar thing my wife read about online. Drank it every morning for 2 months. Nothing seems to make a real dent in these numbers." Raymond's blood pressure wasn't dangerously high most of the time. It hovered around 138/88. But he had these episodes, particularly after stressful days or when he ate something he shouldn't have, where it would jump to 155 or higher. Those spikes terrified him, given his family history. I suggested he try incorporating beetroot into his routine in a specific way, not as a replacement for his medication, but as an additional tool. Within 3 weeks, Raymond reported something remarkable. His baseline numbers had dropped slightly, which was good, but more importantly, his spike episodes had become less severe. Instead of jumping to 155, he might reach 142. Still elevated, but significantly less dangerous. "It's like having a pressure release valve," he described it. "Things still go up when I'm stressed, but they don't go up as far, and they come back down faster." Now, if you're still watching and finding this information useful, take a moment to type a comment below. Just write something simple like "I'm learning," or share your own experience with blood pressure challenges. It helps me know I'm reaching people who need this information. Let me talk about how to actually use beetroot effectively, because there's a right way and a less effective way to do this. The most potent form is beetroot juice. About 8 ounces of pure beetroot juice contains roughly the optimal amount of nitrates for cardiovascular benefit. You can find this in most grocery stores now, either in the refrigerated section or sometimes near the organic products. Look for juice that's 100% beetroot without added sugars or other fruit juices diluting it. The timing matters too. If you're using beetroot juice to help manage spikes, the effects typically begin within 1 to 2 hours and peak around 2 to 3 hours after consumption. So if you know you have a stressful event coming up, like a difficult family conversation or a medical appointment that makes you anxious, drinking your beetroot juice about 2 hours beforehand can help blunt that spike. Mrs. Patricia Gonzalez learned this lesson well. She's 71 years old, a retired bank manager from Phoenix, Arizona. Patricia spent 32 years in banking, worked her way up from a teller position to managing one of the largest branches in the city. She handled millions of dollars in transactions without breaking a sweat, made presentations to regional executives without a single nervous tremor, but put her in a doctor's waiting room, and her body responded like she was facing a life-threatening emergency. Patricia is what I call a white coat syndrome patient. Her blood pressure would be perfectly fine at home, but the moment she walked into any medical office, it would skyrocket. She'd get readings of 160/95 at the doctor's office when her home readings were typically 128/82. "I can't explain it logically," Patricia told me, frustration evident in her voice. "I'm not afraid of doctors. I've had minor surgeries. I've been through childbirth twice. Nothing scares me anymore, or at least I thought nothing did. But my body just reacts. My heart starts pounding the moment I smell that antiseptic smell. By the time they put the cuff on my arm, I'm already in trouble." This created a real problem because her doctors kept wanting to increase her medication based on those office readings. Patricia knew the medication adjustments weren't necessary because she was monitoring diligently at home. She kept detailed logs. She showed them to every doctor she saw. But she couldn't seem to convince her body to stay calm in medical settings, and some physicians remained skeptical of her home readings. We developed a strategy together. 2 hours before any medical appointment, Patricia drinks 8 ounces of beetroot juice. She also practices some breathing techniques during the drive to the office. The combination has been remarkably effective. Her last 3 office visits showed readings of 134, 131, and 129. Still slightly elevated from her home readings, but no longer in the alarming range that triggered medication discussions. "I finally feel like I have some control," Patricia told me, and there were actual tears in her eyes. "For years, I felt like my body was betraying me every time I walked into a doctor's office. Now I have a tool that helps. But I want to be clear about something important here. Beetroot is not a magic cure. It's not going to replace your blood pressure medication if your doctor has prescribed one, and it's not appropriate for everyone. If you're taking blood thinners, you should discuss beetroot consumption with your doctor first, as it can interact with these medications. If you have kidney problems, particularly kidney stones, the oxalates in beets can be problematic. And if you're taking medications for erectile dysfunction, which also work through the nitric oxide pathway, combining them with large amounts of beetroot juice could potentially cause your blood pressure to drop too low. Mr. Harold Washington, 76 years old, a retired postal worker from Birmingham, Alabama, learned about these interactions the hard way. Harold spent 38 years walking the same mail route, knew every family on his streets by name, watched children grow up and have children of their own. When he retired, he threw himself into his garden with the same dedication he'd brought to his job. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, and now he wanted to add beets because he'd heard they were good for blood pressure. He'd heard about beetroot from a friend at his church who swore it had transformed his health. Harold started drinking juice 3 times a day without mentioning it to his doctor. He figured it was just vegetables. What could possibly go wrong? He was also taking a blood thinner for atrial fibrillation, a heart rhythm condition that had been diagnosed a few years earlier. Harold started noticing that he bruised more easily. A slight bump against the kitchen counter left purple marks on his arms. Then he had a small cut while shaving that seemed to bleed forever. His wife finally insisted he call the doctor after she watched him hold pressure on that nick for nearly 20 minutes. When he finally mentioned his new beetroot habit to his cardiologist, they realized the combination was affecting his blood's clotting ability. They had to adjust his medication dosage to account for the beetroot, and now everything is properly balanced. This is why I always emphasize that even natural approaches need to be discussed with your healthcare provider. They need to see the complete picture of what you're consuming to keep you safe. Now, let me share some practical ways to incorporate beetroot if you're not excited about drinking straight juice. Because I'll be honest with you, beetroot juice has a very earthy taste that some people find challenging. Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell is 70 years old, a retired nurse from Portland, Oregon. Eleanor spent 40 years taking care of other people in the cardiac care unit of a major hospital. She held the hands of patients during their most frightening moments. She knew more about heart health than most people could learn in a lifetime. And now she's finally focused on her own health instead of everyone else's. But she absolutely could not tolerate straight beetroot juice. She tried, genuinely tried for 2 weeks, but the earthy flavor made her gag every single time. I felt like I was drinking liquid dirt, she told me, laughing at herself but also clearly frustrated. And I've eaten some strange things in my life. I've traveled to 37 countries. I've tried street food in markets that most Americans wouldn't go near. But that beet juice was just too much for me. It tasted like I'd squeezed mud through a cheesecloth. I understood her frustration. We've all experienced foods that just don't work for us, no matter how healthy they might be. Forcing yourself to consume something you genuinely despise rarely leads to long-term success. Your body starts to rebel, and eventually you give up entirely. We worked together to find alternatives that would actually be sustainable for her lifestyle. Eleanor now makes a morning smoothie that includes about half a cup of roasted beets blended with banana, frozen berries, a splash of orange juice, and some Greek yogurt. The sweetness of the fruit masks the earthiness of the beet completely. She actually looks forward to it now. She also discovered that roasted beets, sliced thin and added to her lunch salad with goat cheese and walnuts, became something she genuinely enjoyed. The roasting brings out a natural sweetness that raw beets don't have. I went from dreading my blood pressure strategy to actually enjoying it, Eleanor said. That makes all the difference in whether I stick with it. Consistency is crucial here. The benefits of beetroot accumulate over time. While you might notice some acute effects within hours of consumption, the real cardiovascular benefits come from regular, sustained intake. Most research suggests that daily consumption for at least 4 weeks produces the most significant and lasting improvements. Let me tell you about Mr. George Patterson. George is 81 years old, a retired accountant from Minneapolis, Minnesota. George is what I call a data person. He tracks everything. He has spreadsheets going back decades for his finances, and when he was diagnosed with high blood pressure at 65, he started tracking those numbers with the same meticulous attention. When George started incorporating beetroot into his routine, he didn't just casually notice improvements. He documented everything: morning readings, evening readings, what he ate, how much beetroot he consumed, his stress levels, his sleep quality. After 6 months, he brought me a printed report that would make any researcher proud. "The trend is undeniable," George said, showing me his graphs. "My average systolic dropped from 142 to 131. My spikes decreased in frequency from about 4 per week to maybe 1, and the magnitude of those spikes dropped from an average of 18 points above baseline to about 11 points. Now, George's experience might not match everyone's. He was also doing other things right: staying active, managing stress, taking his medication consistently. But he credits the beetroot with being the missing piece that finally brought his numbers into a range he felt comfortable with. If you've made it this far in the video, I want to acknowledge something. Managing blood pressure is exhausting. The constant monitoring, the dietary restrictions, the worry every time you feel your heart pound a little harder. It can feel like your body has become an enemy you're constantly fighting against. But here's what I've learned from decades of working with patients. Your body isn't your enemy. It's actually giving you important signals. High blood pressure is your cardiovascular system telling you something needs attention. When you respond with tools like beetroot, along with other lifestyle approaches and appropriate medication, you're not fighting your body. You're working with it. Mrs. Beverly Turner, 74 years old, a retired florist from Savannah, Georgia, put it beautifully. Beverly had struggled with blood pressure issues for over 15 years. She'd been on multiple medications, tried countless dietary changes, and often felt defeated. "I used to wake up angry at my body," she told me. "Why couldn't it just work right? Why was I dealt this genetic hand? I spent years being frustrated and scared." After incorporating beetroot and shifting her mindset, something changed for Beverly beyond just her numbers. "I started seeing my blood pressure readings as information, not verdicts," she explained. "A high reading doesn't mean I failed. It means my body needs something. Maybe more rest, maybe less stress, maybe my beetroot smoothie. I work with my body now instead of against it." Beverly's numbers have stabilized significantly, But she says the bigger change is in how she feels about her health overall. The fear has diminished. The daily dread has lifted. She checks her blood pressure with curiosity now instead of anxiety. There are other foods that can complement beetroot in supporting healthy blood pressure, and I want to mention them briefly because a comprehensive approach always works better than relying on any single strategy. Leafy greens like spinach and arugula also contain nitrates, though in lower concentrations than beetroot. They're excellent additions to your regular diet. Potassium-rich foods like bananas, sweet potatoes, and avocados help balance sodium in your system. Fatty fish like salmon and mackerel provide omega-3 fatty acids that support overall cardiovascular health. And foods rich in magnesium, such as almonds, pumpkin seeds, and dark chocolate, help with blood vessel relaxation. Mr. William Chen, 69 years old, a retired restaurant owner from San Francisco, California, took this comprehensive approach to heart. William spent his career cooking for others, and he decided to use those skills for his own health transformation. "I created what I call my blood pressure menu," William told me with obvious pride. "Breakfast is a beetroot smoothie with spinach and banana. Lunch includes a big salad with arugula, topped with pumpkin seeds and avocado. Dinner features salmon at least 3 times a week, and I allow myself a small piece of dark chocolate for dessert." William's approach is more intensive than most people need, but it reflects an important principle. When you combine multiple supportive foods rather than relying on a single ingredient, the effects often multiply. His blood pressure has been remarkably stable for over 2 years now. Let me address something I hear frequently from patients. Many people ask me about supplements. Can't I just take a beetroot powder supplement instead of dealing with the actual vegetable or juice? The answer is nuanced. Yes, there are beetroot supplements available, and some of them do contain meaningful amounts of nitrates. However, the absorption and effectiveness can vary significantly between products. The processing methods used to create powders sometimes reduce the nitrate content. And supplements aren't regulated as strictly as foods, so you can't always be certain what you're getting. If you do choose to use supplements, look for products that specify their nitrate content and come from reputable manufacturers. But in general, I recommend whole food sources whenever possible. They come with additional nutrients and fiber that supplements don't provide. Mrs. Gloria Martinez, 72 years old, a retired dental hygienist from San Antonio, Texas, tried the supplement route first. She took beetroot capsules for 3 months and didn't notice much difference. When she switched to actual beetroot juice, the change was noticeable within weeks. "I think my body just knows the difference," Gloria said. "When I eat real food, something different happens than when I swallow a pill. Maybe it's the digestion process, maybe it's other compounds in the whole beet, but the real thing works better for me." Now I want to talk about expectations, because having realistic expectations is crucial for any health intervention. Beetroot is not going to take your blood pressure from dangerously high to perfectly normal overnight. It's not going to allow you to stop your medication without your doctor's approval. And it's not going to work equally well for everyone because our bodies are beautifully, frustratingly individual. What beetroot can realistically do is provide an additional tool in your blood pressure management toolkit. It can help blunt the severity of spikes. It can support the effectiveness of your other interventions. And over time, with consistent use, it can contribute to modest but meaningful improvements in your numbers. Mr. Robert Thompson, 77 years old, a retired airline pilot from Denver, Colorado, had initially unrealistic expectations. He'd read something online that made it sound like beetroot juice would solve all his cardiovascular problems. When his blood pressure didn't drop dramatically after a week, he was ready to give up. "I expected a miracle," Robert admitted later. "When I didn't get one immediately, I figured it didn't work. But my wife convinced me to give it a real chance, to commit to 3 months before judging." By the end of those 3 months, Robert's perspective had completely shifted. His numbers had improved modestly but consistently. His energy levels were better. And perhaps most importantly, he felt like he was actively doing something positive for his health every day. "It's not about miracles," he told me. It's about showing up every day and doing the small things that add up over time. That wisdom applies to so much more than beetroot. The patients I've seen achieve the best long-term outcomes are never looking for quick fixes. They're committed to sustainable daily practices that compound over months and years. As we approach the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with some concrete action steps. Not vague advice, but specific things you can do starting tomorrow. First, consider trying beetroot juice or whole beets for at least 4 weeks. Give your body time to respond. Track your blood pressure regularly so you can actually see whether it's making a difference for you specifically. Second, talk to your doctor before making any significant dietary changes, especially if you're on blood thinners, have kidney issues, or take medications that affect nitric oxide pathways. They need to know your complete health picture. Third, don't abandon your other interventions. Beetroot works best as part of a comprehensive approach that includes appropriate medication, regular movement, stress management, and an overall healthy diet. It's a powerful tool, but not a replacement for everything else. Fourth, be patient with yourself and with your body. Health improvements happen gradually. Celebrate small victories. A 2-point drop in your average reading is still a drop. A spike that peaks at 145 instead of 155 is still progress. And finally, remember that you're not alone in this journey. Millions of people are managing blood pressure challenges every single day. Finding strategies that work, adjusting when they don't, showing up consistently even when it's frustrating. Mrs. Dorothy Henderson, the retired teacher I mentioned at the beginning of this video, called me 6 months after starting her beetroot routine. Her voice sounded different on the phone. Lighter somehow. Less strained. "I checked my blood pressure this morning," she said. "And for the first time in years, I wasn't scared to look at the numbers. Even before I saw them, I knew they'd be reasonable. Not because anything magical happened, but because I finally feel like I have some control. And doctor, you can't put a number on what that peace of mind is worth." That peace of mind is what I want for you too. Not just better numbers, though those matter, but the feeling that you're actively caring for your heart, that you have tools and strategies that actually help, that your body is working with you, not against you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you found this information valuable, please share it with someone you care about who might be struggling with similar challenges. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment telling me what health topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. Most importantly, take what you've learned today and put it into action. Your heart will thank you for it. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.